It is comeback season, and the Islanders are in the midst of a comeback season, and you're putting me in a really weird situation. I mean, okay, yes, I want my grandkids to have their dad around and everything else like that,
yeah.
but I mean, it's just a weird situation you're putting me in this morning.
Oh, why?
It's not like I don't want him in particular to stay here. Of course I do. And in order for him and maybe Cal and a few of the other guys to stay here and not get traded, maybe they've heard the whispers out there. Now all of a sudden they're playing great and they've won 4 in a row. And quite frankly, if you go back to the Stadium Series game against the Rangers, the way they lost that game was so improbable that it showed you how good they were. I mean, they were a good team. They just fell apart at the end, and the Rangers had a couple of man advantage, and Laviolette, the Ranger coach, pulls the goalie twice, and you end up scoring goals in those situations, and then you win in overtime. So, they're a tough team to play. They're finally finding their game. Good for them. But you just put me in a weird spot.
Oh, no, I don't think so at all. This is just showing support for your entire family. That's what it is. And when they start winning some games, of course, my attention is back on them, and I'm happy for Matt. Got to keep him here. Maybe that's what it was. You're right. Maybe a little fire under the ass when you say, hey, the trade deadline's coming up. Maybe you go somewhere else if this team falls apart. But feeling good about them now. They got a West Coast swing coming up, so hopefully they keep it moving. I don't have a Saquon Barkley jersey on today because I don't believe he should be staying anywhere in this area.
If I were him, I'd be on the first plane out of here.
Absolutely, and I don't blame the Giants for handling the situation the way they've handled it. I don't blame Saquon for going somewhere else, but this is the perfect time for both of them to split. Saquon Barkley's only got X amount of years left to be a really productive back. We see how these guys fall off. He's already got an injury history, so someone's going to want him. Someone's going to pay him. The New York Giants don't need to be paying a running back at all because they're in a full rebuild. They're probably going to end up drafting a quarterback. This is going to be the last year of Daniel Jones, and this is going to be over. This is now it. Now, the rebuild got started 2 years too late because of what happened in that first season of Brian Daboll and Daniel Jones together and winning the playoff game, and they had to keep him. They had to. And I was the biggest Daniel Jones critic in the world going into that season, and he was great. And he was great in that playoff game, and you had to keep him. You had no choice. Maybe not pay him that much, but there is an out at the end of this coming year. So now, really, is when Joe Shane and Brian Daboll get their hands on this roster and totally make it theirs. But will John Mara, after another season where they're going to be losing and they're going to not make the playoffs, I'd be shocked if they did, is he going to be able to tolerate another one of those seasons? Especially
with the new defense coordinator coming in and, trying to figure all that stuff out. I would just say that given Rich Eisen's report about the Giants are done with Daniel Jones and they want to start over, then that tells me if I am a veteran player like McKinney and Xavier McKinney and like Saquon Barkley, you go somewhere else where you can win. Now, you may have to settle for less money. I don't know. It's amazing to me what's going on with the running backs in the NFL. We talk about it every year, but even more so this year because all of these guys are not getting tagged. They're getting released. It's almost like they go to like team meetings. In team meetings, they sit down and they go, okay, is anybody going to pay a running back? Nah, we're not going to pay a running back, and then everybody gets cut.
Collusion?
It feels that way, especially when it comes to this position. It's not... they're spending a lot of money on a lot of players, and we expect Justin Jefferson to get about $30 million a year as a wide receiver. So it's not like they're trying to save money because they're all going to spend up to whatever it is, $50 million. It's just that this one position, it's like everybody is looking at the analytics of the position, and they're saying, you know what, we don't need these guys to be making this kind of money, especially if we're only going to get, 13, 14 games out of them, or we're going to lose them for, half the season.
Yeah, I also think it sort of reminds me of baseball and some of these off seasons we've seen where teams are just not paying guys that are in their 30s or in their mid 30s anymore. It's very rare. I mean, obviously Steve Cohen paid a couple of guys who were 1,000 years old that were pitchers, but
they were only 2-year contracts.
Right. So you don't see these longer deals for guys who were 32, 33. Aaron Judge got a big deal at 30, but you don't see it. It's not like they all got together in a room and said it. Just that looked at some of the data and said that this is just not worth it. to be paying guys that are this age. If you look at the production, the same thing's going on for a running back. But I do believe that Saquon Barkley, obviously he's got a long injury history, but when he's healthy, he's going to be tremendously productive, especially in a real offense. In a real offense? What is that going to be like for Saquon Barkley?
It would be a totally new lease on life.
Yeah.
And, I don't know where he's going to end up going. I know that you hear Houston a lot. We hear the Chargers. We've even heard the Cowboys. But, again, it goes down to how much money can these people spend and how much will they spend and what is he looking for? I mean, if somebody gave him, I don't know, $10 billion for 2 years and he guaranteed it, and would he go for that? Is he looking for $15 million a year? Who knows? And I hope it doesn't sign some Fugazi contract that says, 3 years, $48 million, where, $22 million of it is guaranteed. You know what I mean? That's just a Fugazi contract. That's just adding years on so you don't get a bigger cap hit. And that's not a contract that, hopefully he and his agent won't sign. He'll sign a real deal. Sign a 2-year deal for, I don't know, $24 million.
Which is, I think, sort of something that the Giants had offered last year, like $12 million a year. But it's a little bit different now, a year older, whatever it may be. Felt like he had to fight the fight and take the franchise tag and roll the dice a little bit. But, I mean, there's just absolutely no way that you can win in that spot because at the end of the season, you're just a year older, more wear and tear, another injury that he had to deal with where he spent a few weeks away from the team and not playing and missing games. So this is a time now that it just feels right. Unfortunately, things did not work out as the number 2 overall pick. It just
It's not that he was bad.
No.
I think it was just on a bad team.
He was on a bad team. And
I think he's a really good football player who's been besieged by injuries, and he's been on a bad team.
And he was a tremendous representative. I'm speaking like he's gone now, but it feels like he's gone.
Yeah.
But he was a tremendous representative to the organization, the Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee for the Giants this year. He never, even through that whole contract thing, acted like a baby. He just talked about it in professional terms. He didn't go to social media and do all the things that the Jets do when they're unhappy. Think about this. He's in a casino having fun, walking by, we see him. Al says, "You want to go on?" And he goes, "Hey, let me call my manager to make sure I'm okay." He's done everything right, is my point.
Yes.
And it just sucks that it didn't work out for him and the Giants in the fact that they couldn't celebrate more victories together. Did make the playoffs, of course, a couple years ago and beating the Vikings and going to the divisional round. But I would imagine the type of guy that he is, with the money being suppressed in the running back market, that winning to him is so critically important.
It's got to be. And it's got to be, could you imagine if somebody like Mike McDaniel or one of these top 5 offenses in the league, Kansas City, I think Harbaugh is going to have a great offense out there in L.A. I mean, if one of those offenses and one of those offensive minds gets him and is able to use him in a way that, maybe he's not touching the ball 350 times a year.
Yeah.
Maybe he's touching it 210, 220 times a year. And, 50 or 60 of those touches are out of the backfield catching the ball. I mean, that would be like, and if you could add him to a group, like look at the group that the 49ers have. If you could add him to another team that has somewhat of a group like that, with an established quarterback that is, going to throw for 4,500 yards. Now, all of a sudden, you put him in that situation, and it's a completely different set of circumstances for him as a player, and certainly for the offense that gets a player of his caliber. He's not going to turn out to be the gold jacket guy that we were told that he was going to be, simply because I believe he was in a bad spot. He was in a bad spot when he first got here, and it never really ever turned around for him. And even that 1 year that they end up going to the playoffs, I mean, quite frankly, that was, they were fighting tooth and nail to get into it.
Oh, yeah. And nobody expected them to be that good. So the fact that they made it was amazing. The fact that they won a game was amazing. It was a tremendous ride. And looking back at that time, I wouldn't have done anything different. The Daniel Jones money to me was a lot. We said that at the time. This is not a second guess. But as far as signing him, I said it back then. You had to do it. There was no way you could.
There's no alternative. There was no other alternative for Daniel, and he was coming off of a terrific season. He had a great playoff game at Minnesota.
Yeah.
And it wasn't his fault that the playoff game, against Philadelphia didn't turn out as well. I mean, Philadelphia was a great team at that point.
Right.
I mean, they ran into basically, and they have been dealing with it. I feel like they've been dealing with the Cowboys and with the Eagles for the last, I know it goes back longer than the last 5 years, but I'm just feeling like they've never caught up to them over the last 5 years.
Oh, no way. Yeah, I mean, and they were obviously the Super Bowl victories for the Giants in the last almost 20 years now have been amazing, and 7-11. But I mean, after that, the Cowboys and the Eagles have been smacking around the Giants seemingly every single year.
I do feel like they have the right head coach, though. I really do.
Oh yeah, I mean,
I feel like he's got he's the old school kind of grizzled NFL coach. He had to expand his offense for Josh Allen, which I think he did, and he got the best out of Josh Allen. I think they thought that Daniel Jones could be like a mini Josh Allen, that he could do some of the same things, but there's something missing. And whatever that missing piece is, they know what it is, and it's probably why Rich Eisen heard that at the NFL Combine, that the Giants are, as I think he put it, done, and done.
Yeah, and they may be, but getting out of that contract this year before next year would be bad business. And I know that there is a locker room component to this if they end up drafting a quarterback and that they can get out of a contract at the end of next year, and it just makes for this very awkward situation in the quarterback room. But I mean, if you look at, like, first of all, a pre-6-1 release, because just to not get so deep into the cap, but you can obviously save money before or after June 1st as opposed to before June 1st in the NFL calendar for whatever reason that they made it. So if you do before June 1st, there's just it's the dumbest thing in the world. There's a dead cap of almost $70 million.
You also have to remember, too, he's still coming off of a knee injury. Now, by all accounts, and knowing who Daniel is, the professional that he is, he's probably putting every ounce of energy into that rehab.
Sure. So then you look at, okay, well, what about after June 1st? Well, that's sort of like a Russell Wilson situation, which I know they had to get rid of him, and Sean Payton and him couldn't coexist, whatever, but it's terrible business. And you would have a dead cap of $60 million if you released him after June 1st, and then another $22 million next year in 2025, which is almost as much as it is. I think about the same amount of money that the Broncos are eating for Russell Wilson, which is nuts.
You know what this brings us to? The Kansas City model.
The Kansas City model, yes.
Yeah.
So that's really, and there's an out after next year.
Just like they had Alex Smith, they drafted Patrick Mahomes in the first round, and Andy Reid, I'm sure, went to Alex, hey, look, you're the starting quarterback. I'm not, taking you off the field right now, but quite frankly, I need you to lead my team, and I need you. You don't have to coach the guy behind you. You just got to teach the guy behind you, by doing what you do and who you are. And we'll let that kid watch behind you, figure out how to become a professional quarterback. And then next year we'll trade you to where you want to go, or we'll let you go and then you can go do whatever you want to do. But we need you to stay here. That's kind of the situation I kind of feel like the Giants are in. Their team is not as good as Kansas City was back then, but they may have to go to Daniel Jones and say, look, we want you here. We want you to be our quarterback next year. We fully expect you to be our quarterback next year, but we are also drafting for the future. If, in fact, they draft a quarterback in the first round, who knows? And if we do draft a quarterback in the first round, look, it's your team. You still got to go out there and be the professional. We're paying you to be our quarterback, and we got to let this young guy sit behind you and watch, because we know you know how to prepare. He knows how to prepare. Everybody in that locker room respects him. Everybody in that locker room seems to really, like Daniel Jones as on top of respecting him. But I would think that if that Eisen report is true and they're looking at one of these quarterbacks coming out this year, then I think you got to be honest with Daniel Jones. That's the least you can do.
And he, in 1 year already, a couple years ago, when they didn't pick up the fifth-year option, he was essentially playing for his life in a Giants uniform or his NFL career, he came up big. So he's going to get another one of those opportunities to showcase himself in a year where the Giants draft a quarterback and make it a tough decision to let him go.
If in fact that's what the Giants do.
Well, they have to. They have to.
I understand that we both feel that way, but I'm just saying we have to see what they do on draft day. Draft day will tell us all we need to know. Because they're not going to go free agency hunting for a quarterback of $8 million. To be the backup. I mean, they're going to be going out there to draft the kid, to have him sit and let Daniel Jones be the starter, assuming that he is totally healthy coming off of the knee injury.